He said he'd be judged by the cost at the grocery store. Well, Mr. Speaker, Canadians are judging him, and they are not impressed.
Well, it appears Chris d'Entremont, the Conservative turncoat, had a very different opinion of Mark Carney just a month and a half ago. Welcome to the Canadian Shield. My name is Sterling. There was a Conservative member of Parliament, and I say was because he's now a Liberal member of Parliament as he has crossed the floor. His name is Chris d'Entremont. He was representing a riding in Nova Scotia. Of course, this is sparking a lot of controversy for people who think that if you cross, there's some people saying that if you cross the floor, there should be an immediate by-election. I kind of agree with that one. There are others saying that you shouldn't be permitted to cross the floor. I don't know that that's the situation that I wouldn't be able. I mean, you should be allowed to do whatever you want, though I don't believe you should be able to run as one and then, participate as another. I think that is a betrayal of the entire democratic process. I believe that in Canada, you have the right to vote for the party that you want in office. And so when a person switches allegiances, that should instantaneously and immediately within 30 days trigger a by-election, so that individuals in that riding can have the opportunity to be represented by the party of their choice. Of course, that's not the situation, at least not currently. And the Liberal government is trying to make a big deal out of it. They're trying to use it to overshadow the horrendous budget, the billions of dollars that they're wasting. And, they're making a lot of promises about what they're going to cut, but there's no guarantee they'll cut any of it. So this could actually be somewhere in the neighborhood of a $90 billion deficit. It's pretty gray. Much of the wording, I've had a look at quite a bit of it. And there are some things that I'm going to mention in this video that kind of like the Liberals kind of like show their own failing, And I don't know, based on that, why this fella would cross the aisle for Mark Carney, especially when you hear what he had to say about him just about a month and a half ago. All right, let's get into this. I'm going to give you a little context on this clip before I let you hear it. Mark Carney made an announcement today standing in front of a bunch of Ottawa public transit workers. And, I guess they're ignoring the fact that he's cutting funding to public transit. I'm not sure that he realizes just how unprofitable public transit actually is. Nonetheless, he took time. He brought this Chris d'Entremont with him to this announcement, though he didn't really put him on screen, or at least none of the cameras that were in the room that I saw put him on screen when he was talking about, though he did make reference to him. He did turn his head and look at him. He did talk about how, so he's there at this announcement. And then Mark Carney made his announcement, and one of the reporters asked Mark Carney a very particular question. And hearing the answer, and the question and the answer is kind of, it just should show anybody out there thinking about crossing the floor the reality.
Hi, Prime Minister Michael Couture with CTV News. You mentioned it just 2 seconds ago. Do you think I could ask a question of Mr. d'Entremont?
We'll arrange. Can I finish my press conference, and then we'll have the more interesting press conference afterwards?
This is equally
I'm the
interesting,
warm up.
So you brought the guy with you. You made a reference to him at the beginning. You made a big deal about it in all the headlines. And then when he asked if he could answer a question on the national stage and with the amount of cameras that follow the Prime Minister around, you don't want him to speak to the cameras? Yeah, no, that bodes well for Mr. d'Entremont, doesn't it? I think that we need to see that he probably did it for the attention. I mean, he didn't like being pushed way down the bench now that he's no longer deputy speaker. And Mark Carney didn't want to share the limelight with him. I mean, the clash of egos that are going on in this particular exchange, the concept of Mark Carney that people would want to hear somebody else other than him doesn't seem to really bode that well with his logic, with his own personal narcissism, I suppose. His desire to be the one in the center of attention, his desire to have control over the message, and his control over everything that may be put out on the mainstream media. He's probably banking on the fact that other people won't be watching the turncoat speak because he's, not very well known. And in a minute, people will forget he ever existed. Like, he's going to become the footnote of that guy that crossed the floor. He's not going to be known for somebody who crossed the floor and then made an enormous impact or any of that stuff. The Liberal government is already, this is the very next day. They got what they wanted from him. They got their 5-minute soundbite. And now it's like, no, you can't talk to him as long as you're talking to me. We'll arrange for him to speak to you somewhere else, not when I'm on the microphone. I don't know what else Chris d'Entremont might have expected. Now he'll go back to his riding. All the support that he thought he had will have evaporated. It'll just be gone. And the new people that are going to might be offering him support, he may not have much in common with. But he was the only conservative in the federal seats for Nova Scotia. And it seems to me that he's going to be facing a lot of backlash. He's going to be facing more backlash than he has support, as you can tell by the way the Liberal government doesn't even want to put him in front of the microphone when he's in the room. And they brought him, and he made special reference to say thanks and welcome to the group and all the rest of that at the beginning of this press conference. His career's over, guys. And that's the thing we need to look at. His career's finished. However, Chris d'Entremont did say, "Oh no, I did it because I wanted to. I didn't like the way Pierre Poilievre was operating things." That's interesting. It's really very interesting because in the House of Commons, Chris d'Entremont made a statement in early September of 2025, so about 40 days ago at time of recording. And this was his position on Mark Carney's government.
I want to speak in support of the Conservative motion because Canadians are hurting. Families are being forced to cut deeply into their grocery budgets just to get by. And frankly, that makes me a little bit angry and a little bit sad.
Canada is a wealthy country, but under this Liberal government, it's being mismanaged. Taxpayers are being squeezed, and their hard-earned money is being wasted.
In southwest Nova Scotia, where I have lived my entire life, people work hard. They want to own a home, feed their children, provide a good education to them, and maybe take a vacation every once in a while. But you know what? Since 2015, everything changed. Since I was first elected here in 2019, the cost of living has skyrocketed. Even then, families in West Nova, it was called at the time, but in Acadianapolis, were struggling. We warned that Liberals, their out-of-control spending and massive deficits were irresponsible. But of course, they didn't listen. And now, after 6 months under a new Prime Minister who promised financial discipline, Canadians are still waiting. He said he'd be judged by the cost at the grocery store. Well, Mr. Speaker, Canadians are judging him, and they are not impressed. Instead of delivering relief, this government delayed its budget. So we're still waiting for a budget. We haven't seen a budget in a year and a half. Why? Because it's projecting an over $92 billion deficit. That's a monstrous, irresponsible burden on future generations. We'll hear it, I'm sure, maybe the questions that they're talking about a generational investment. But Mr. Speaker, what it really is a generational debt that my kids, their kids, and their kids' kids are going to have to try to pay in one way or another. That causes inflation and extra costs to future generations.
Well, it seems that just 40 days ago, he had no problem with Pierre Poilievre's message that the Liberal government was rocketing us into the poorhouse. He had no concern at all with the idea that the Conservatives are taking an opposition against the inflation for food prices, which is, of course, what he's speaking to right now. So he didn't agree with Mark Carney's $92 billion projected $92 billion deficit, which if they don't make a couple of cuts, it'll easily go to $90 billion in deficit. I mean, it's $78 billion. It's only a little bit to get to 90. And it's only a little bit to get from 90 to 78. So I guess that little bit is all it took for Chris d'Entremont to decide that he was going to cross the floor. Now, I think what we're looking at here is a little bit of a bruised ego, is a little bit of a man who didn't get his own way, throwing a temper tantrum and realized that he was at least on cameras and had some authority and people were talking to him when he was in the chair. But now that he's not in, the deputy speaker, he doesn't feel like he's getting any camera. Nobody's noticing him. Nobody's looking at him. He's not getting all of the likes on the social media or whatever it happens to be. Not getting the respect that he thinks he earned by simply showing up. Now, I don't know for sure that that's the situation, but I do see that just a month and a half ago, he was saying 100% behind the entire message of the Conservative Party. And what he was saying is not inaccurate, right? I mean, we are looking at horrible food prices. We have horrible inflation. We have horrible housing costs. There's nothing in this country that's affordable. There's nothing in Mark Carney's new budget that will create affordability. And the Liberals themselves admit it. I can show you from their very own budget themselves, they admit that they are the problem. These pages that you're looking at are taken straight from the budget itself. I have a copy of the budget, and here we can see that if you go to page 50 on section 4, it'll be called Building a Strong and Competitive Economy. Canada's path forward is to improve productivity. So these are the Liberals' own words. Now, we all know, those of us that are paying attention, those of us that are honest, we understand that the productivity is damaged in this country due to a couple of primary reasons. One, there are a lot of gatekeeper laws and taxation put in place by the Liberal government over environmental foolishness. And two, there's a lot of taxation that's put in place over the government's desire to be socialist and go flat broke and need to take more and more money. So I'll just read a little bit of it here. A strong economy is tied to a strong productivity growth, the basis of rising living standards and economic competitiveness means finding ways for businesses and workers to produce more with the same effort. So like we've been saying from the very beginning, this is, basic economics 101. The more people working, the better the standard of living. When productivity grows, everyone benefits. Again, 101. The wages and income of hardworking Canadians rise, businesses have conditions to grow and to create more jobs, and Canada stays competitive in the global markets. Well, welcome to we've all been here waiting for you guys to come to the rationalization for more than a decade now. This is the first time they've admitted it out loud. If Canada's productivity growth had matched the U.S. from 2017 to 2023, the median income of a family with one child would be nearly $11,000 higher. That's an extra $1,000 a month, near enough, with one child. The median income, meaning the average income. So he admits that the productivity of Canada is nowhere near the productivity of the United States, even in the span of those 6 years. A strong economy driven by productivity growth also provides steady revenue needed to fund public services Canadians count on. If you got 1 million people working and they're all giving you $5, you got a lot of money to put towards paying for services. If you only got 100 people working and they're all paying you $5, you got nothing. Over the past decade, this is how the paragraph opens. Over the past decade, Canada's productivity performance has been persistently weak. Yeah, no kidding. We've been saying that for a long time. In this time, productivity grew only 0.3% annually, less than 1/3 the pace of the previous 2 decades. Really? This had led to substantial productivity gaps with G7 economies. Well, now, congratulations, Mr. Carney and the Liberal government. You have finally admitted out loud what we have been saying the whole time, that the Liberal government's policies over the last decade have destroyed Canada's economy and left Canada flat broke. Now, I believe they're trying to say this so that they can make you understand that the recession, they couldn't avoid it anymore. There's simply no way to get around it. What I think everybody needs to hear is that when the recession kicks in, they may very well demand higher interest rates on our loans, and even just a 1% kick on those loans translates into billions of dollars. However, I don't want to get ahead of myself. There's one other segment of this budget that also admits that the Liberal government is the problem to the economic woes that Canadians are facing. So we come to the very next page, page 51. Perennially weak productivity growth is closely tied to long-standing weaknesses in investment. For decades, Canadian firms have invested less per worker than their American counterparts. This investment gap worsened since 2015 after the collapse in commodity prices contributed to the sharp fall in energy investment. The gall in that paragraph is astounding to me. What they want you to say, what they're trying to tell you there is in 2015, gas prices, the value of oil and fossil fuels became less. So people weren't investing in it. And as a result, the productivity is perennially slow in Canada. In 2015, the Liberal government came into office and immediately villainized fossil fuels. They are completely 100% responsible for this. It gets better. Overall business investment within Canada has been flat over the past decade, while business investment in the U.S. has risen sharply. Well, I wonder why. Much of this weakness has been driven by retrenchment in capital spending by Canada's energy sector, following the sharp decline in global oil prices in 2015 and contrasting increase in U.S. technology investment in recent years. I don't understand. The Liberal government has been telling us for 10 years that it's just around the corner, that they're making generational investments and that everything is going to be just fine tomorrow. And if you don't agree with them, somehow you hate Canada. Isn't that the same message they're giving right now? Oh, we're investing generationally for Canada. But the reality is that their ideas, their emotions, their actions are the reason we're here. And they talk about a fall in oil prices, but have you seen that at the pump? The only time oil prices came down at the pump is when they cut out the carbon tax. Thank you very much, Pierre Poilievre. Also, last month, and I'll do a report on it, but I know for a fact that last month, the United States government, for the first time, exported 10 million barrels. Oh, no, shortage, yeah. Canada's economy has also faced weak investment in machinery and equipment, research and development, and intangible assets like intellectual property, data, and software that is pervasive across all sectors. Gee, I wonder why. I wonder why we have not had investment in any part of our workforce, in any part of our economy, in any part of our businesses. I wonder if it has to do with environmental laws that turn investment away by the millions of dollars, billions of dollars, like the Conservatives, like people, my channels like mine have been telling you now for as long as I've been talking about it. I wonder if it has to do with the enormous taxation. I mean, now he says in here somewhere that he's offering corporations 3% less than Donald Trump is offering them. I haven't found it yet, but he claims that it's in here on another press conference that I saw him at. So all you got to do now is get the investment to come into the country by convincing them that they don't have to worry about the green agenda, but that's not true. Mark Carney is offering these taxation investments if you invest in green tech, wind and solar. Oh yeah, because solar is an excellent investment for Canadians. I mean, it's November. I haven't seen the sun shine in 3 days. And I live in southern Ontario. I can't imagine what it's like up north. These guys and their insistence that somehow they're going to be doing the exact same thing over and over again, but this decade, this time it'll be different. They have right in their own budget, at least a page and a half of them admitting that they're the reason that the economic situation of Canada and Canadians is so bad. And they know how to get out of it. They simply refuse to because they are ideologically driven, because they don't care about the hardships that it's having on your life. They only care about what they can do for themselves. And that's the kind of thing that we have to watch out for in Canada. That's the kind of situation the government, no matter which stripe you are, if you're there for selfish needs and selfish reasons, then you cannot be the leader that you claim to be, no matter how polished your approach is, no matter how well manicured your hands are, or your hair is, or your suit is, or any of that stuff, your message is. You have to look through all of that and understand that actions speak louder than words. And the actions of the Liberal government, many years of which Mark Carney was behind the scenes pulling on the strings, those actions, those economic policies, Chrystia Freeland, they have caused this problem. And doing the same thing is not going to get us out of it. Worrying about the environment and telling ourselves that it's all about green tech in a country that has more resources that are not green than they do resources that are green. Knowing full well that, you get a single rock into a solar panel and it never works again. You have to replace the entire thing. In a country that electricity won't keep warm through the winter in most of it. I don't want to go too far afield. I just wanted you to hear how the Liberal government in their own budget have admitted that they are the problem. And Chris Entremount, the guy who's making a big deal about crossing the floor and trying to convince you that it's all about Pierre Poilievre, didn't have any problem talking about how bad the Liberals were just a month and a half ago for the exact same reasons that there's nothing changed. He says it was about the bad spending. He says it was about all these things that the Liberals admit to. And yet here they are, still the same. So really, did he cross the floor because of Pierre Poilievre, or did he cross the floor because of his own needs and own wants and his own desires? And I get that that's a mess that he made and he's going to have to deal with it. I just want you as Canadians to understand that we have to look through the smoke screen. We have to see beyond the smoke and mirrors. We have to understand that in reality, in the end, what we want is cheap food, nice place to live for not a lot of money, inexpensive cost of living. And the rest of it can go away. Just like you never heard of politics before your cost of living started to go into the tank, into the toilet, then you can go back to forgetting that they even exist. I'll leave that for another video. I'm going to wrap here. Thank you for listening. I'll talk to you next time.